Welcome back to the Elevate With Us podcast. I am so excited to welcome our guest for a second show. Reid Mann is an amazing estate planner based in the Northeast Florida market. And I think it's really important that we spend a lot of time talking about estate planning because we learned last time there's a lot of misconceptions on probate and misconceptions on who should use it and who shouldn't use it. And the bottom line is really everybody needs to estate plan. So Reid, thank you so much for coming back. I really appreciate it. So let's talk about why you had to come back because of what I did. So this has never happened before, and we'd filmed quite a few podcasts, is I moved my foot and I unplugged everything. So it's okay though, because we continued filming hoping it had taped, even though we kind of knew it didn't. So
second time's a charm.
Exactly. Why not? Absolutely. Plus, you know, I was able to watch that podcast a few times, and I'm guessing a lot of viewers have a lot of questions because, and I said it last time, I don't understand estate planning. If I don't understand it, I know there's a lot of other people that don't.
Sure.
And so let's kind of start talking about probate, because I think that, I know they kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah. I mean, this is just estate planning, of course, isn't something that anyone is taught, right?
No, they don't.
We don't know.
It's not a class in school.
Yeah.
Should be, though. It should be
to
a college
extent,
class.
Right?
Yeah.
Like how to manage your finances.
Yeah, we need that for sure. That should be a whole year class, like each quarter, like managing your money, loans.
Basics, like how to work a checking account, what credit is.
And why it's important to have credit. Oh my God, I'll never forget when I first started in real estate, somebody came in, I was a site agent for these like very affordable townhomes, and he didn't have any credit. He didn't have no credit. He had none. Like, it wasn't bad. He had zero credit. He was like 30 years old.
I know.
Can't buy a house.
Can't buy a house.
No. Well, you can. It's just harder. Banks
with cash.
Yeah, much harder. Anyway, so established credit. So we're onto something. We're going to create a class.
So point is that similar to those things, no one teaches us about estate planning and why is it significant and why do I need it? And so many people that I work with come to me.
Well, and who needs it?
After the fact.
Yeah.
They've learned the hard way that it's important. And what I mean by that is it's usually a loved one, family member has passed away and it's left a mess. And then having to deal with that, they say, I don't want this in my family.
Right.
I don't want this to happen to me after all I've worked for, everything I've created for my family. And so it's after they've learned the hard way that we have to.
I know one of my favorite expressions is failing to plan is planning to fail.
Yeah.
And that's definitely the case with this. So in your opinion, when should people start having a conversation about estate planning?
Yeah, so everyone needs an estate plan, right? But what it looks like is going to be very different for any individual given their circumstances.
Okay.
Married, single, divorced, blended family, 21, 65, all those are factors that come into play, right? So an estate plan should be very tailored to a person's circumstances to be able to achieve what's important to them. So part of what I do is what I call reverse engineering. Let's identify. It's
my favorite. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's identify the outcomes that you want, or the outcomes that are important to you, and then we'll work backwards to see what it takes for you to get those particular outcomes.
Okay.
Right?
I love that. That's probably because I find. I mean, I still have not done anything about estate planning.
Yeah.
Shame on me, because I think it's just too scary. Right. It's like, and I still haven't had a conversation with my mom. Mom, if you're watching, we need to talk. About it, because it is really, I think it is, especially if my mom is single,
right? So
when she, when it comes to the time, there is not another decision maker. It would be the children. Yeah.
The interesting thing is we plan like crazy for play dates, birthday parties, Super Bowl parties, college game day. But the one thing that we know is going to happen, we don't plan, right?
No.
Now, one thing is ultimately, of course, is passing away, is death.
Sure.
It's something that it's hard to kind of face. We don't want to think about that, right?
No, people do not like talking about their own mortality.
Yeah. And in truth, a lot of estate planning isn't, you personally aren't going to reap the benefit.
Sure.
It's for those that you love and who will be left, that you're taking care of, that you're making sure that they aren't put in a bad place. Yeah. They're already going to be in a tough spot, right?
Right.
They're grieving, they're in loss.
That's a really powerful point of view, is to take yourself out of it.
Yeah.
Right. And then just say, hey, like, I know this is hard or sad or whatever the emotion is, but I'm doing it for the other people because it isn't about me, it's about them. Right. And a lot of us are trying to build generational wealth. Yeah. Right. And set up our kids and our grandkids for success. It's one of my life goals for sure. And I'm sure for you as well. And knowing that doing that would do that for them, you kind of like your kids more than you like yourself, so you're
right.
So thinking about it's for them. I love that perception.
Yeah. So it's, thinking about not only generational wealth, but let's have a plan in place that there's not infighting. Right. And there's not broken families. Oh. Because everyone we won't fight, we get along. And then it's a whole different story when certain, whether there's money or there's not money, you never know, right? So I personally had the experience in my own family where when my mother-in-law passed away, she didn't have any planning in place, and she left behind a disabled son, adult son. And so it wasn't about money, but it was about who's going to now shoulder the responsibility of caring for him. Sure. And that resulted in some really bad infighting between my wife and her siblings, and a bunch of other family dynamics resurfaced. Oh, I'm sure it's... So nothing to do with money and assets, right? But if there had been
responsibility.
If there had been some planning in place, it could have really changed things. Sure. Along those same lines, my dad unexpectedly passed away, and he was involved in an accident that resulted in him being on life support. Wow. And he didn't have any healthcare directives. Oh, he didn't have a living will, as they call it. He didn't have a living will. So a living will talks about what do you want to happen if that situation presents itself. No one thinks it's going to happen to him.
No, but everybody, because accidents happen. Yeah. I mean,
exactly. That's why it's called an accident, right?
Exactly right. So that, in my opinion, is probably the number one thing people of all adults should have. Yeah. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is a living will. If you have nothing else, get a living will. Yeah. I mean, because...
And so that's where we start saying what a plan looks like for one person versus another, very different, right? After going through that with my dad, I'm of the opinion that everyone needs it.
No, I agree with you 100%.
The minute you turn 18 and become an adult, like kids going off to college, I tell parents of kids going off to college, at least get some healthcare directives in place. Sure. What if your kid has an accident? What if your kid gets really sick? Yeah, you're still your kid. They're only 19 or 20, but they're a legal adult, and the hospital just may not let you show up and start making decisions.
Right, they're going to ask
they're an adult.
For the directive.
They're going to say you're not authorized. Right. They are an adult, right?
Yeah, that's so tough. That's a really, really important one to remember, that at 18 you're legally an adult, and there's a lot of things. Unfortunately, a lot of things that can happen.
Right, and then it can get complicated real quick, because you could have. You'd have for example, a divorce, right? So now you have two parents who are no longer in a relationship, and there's an adult child that's now been incapacitated or has gotten sick, and they equally want to make decisions, but they can't agree amongst themselves.
Of course they can't agree amongst themselves.
So now you have this person laying in a hospital bed while two people are trying to fight it out. So just because you're a parent doesn't mean you instantly have the final say, right?
Sure, and that's very valid. What, more than 50% of all marriages end in divorce? So, it's probably an even more important thing to make sure you have for your adult child. That, no one thinks about living wills ever. I don't even think. I would imagine a lot of us had never even heard of it.
And I'll be approached by a lot of people. Reid, hey, I want to get a living will done, and we get talking, and really what they're meaning is a last will and testament. So very different. Last will and testament and living will, two completely different things, right?
That's like a will.
Right, a will. Yeah. and a living will is all about, if, again, God forbid, if you ended up on life support, what do you want to
So in the living will, it'd say things like, do you want to have life-saving measures taken, organ
donation?
So
basically, in Florida, we have a form, if you will, that's approved by the state legislature. So it essentially says that First, you have to be deemed incapacitated.
Okay, so there are
there are criteria.
Criteria, yes.
You're incapacitated. Certain conditions are present. Maybe you're in a persistent vegetative state.
I see.
2 doctors, independent of one another, have determined that there's no reasonable medical probability of survival, except for the life support basically keeping you alive.
That's intense.
Then what do you want to have happen? Basically remain or have it removed, right?
Wow, that's intense. Okay, so there's a lot of rules before your living will comes into place.
Yeah, there's some criteria that has to be met. It's just not like, oh, hey, this person's in a hospital bed.
Right.
Unplug.
I'm done. I'm done with them. Wow, okay. So what different documentations, for lack of a better word, should a family have? We'll just do something standard, like a family, a married couple, a couple of kids,
right?
Whatever.
Yeah. So that's a really good question, and my answer is, what outcomes do you want?
Oh,
and so
I want a simple, I want a non-probated thing if I die. When I die.
Yeah. So what are the goals? What is estate planning, first off, right?
Right.
People hear the term estate planning, and in my opinion, it carries kind of a negative connotation. It's automatically stereotyped.
Well, I think it's only for
wealthy.
I think it's only for wealthy people.
It's only for people who are of a certain age.
Yeah,
things like that,
75
right?
and you've got millions of dollars in the bank.
Right.
They have estate plans.
Yeah, exactly. They have estate plans because I have an estate. I have a palace, right?
Correct.
An estate. And that's just not the case, because we have to look at it from a technical legal perspective.
Because
right?
I guess, what is the legal definition of an estate?
Right. Well, to make it simple, it's basically property.
It's your stuff. That's what I thought.
Yeah, your stuff. So,
and it includes chattel.
Yeah. So if you are any level of an adult existing in this world, you have a bank account, you have a car, whether you rent or own a home, you have furnishings in a house, you have an estate.
It's so funny. I wonder why we think of an estate as something grand. I wonder where that happened.
I think it ties way back to Old England.
Yeah, probably. I'm so curious now because if the definition of an estate is stuff, I mean, everyone has an estate.
Right, everyone has an estate.
So I feel like last time we were talking about something that happens with bank accounts when you pass.
Yeah, so this notion of estate planning, right, is, okay, I have stuff, whether it's bank accounts, property in my house or apartment, my car, when you pass away.
Your pets. Aren't your pets chattel in Florida?
That's your personal property.
Yeah.
What's going to happen to your stuff? Where does it go? Who gets it? Because if you don't have a plan in place, if you proactively have not put a plan in place saying this is what happens to it.
Who decides for you?
The state of Florida has a plan for you. It's already written. It's on the books.
Oh, like everyone has the same plan?
Yeah.
What is
default plan? Probate.
The default plan is...
The default plan is probate.
Probate.
So probate is the court process of essentially wrapping up a deceased person's affairs.
Okay.
Do they have property? Okay. Who gets it? What do they get? How do we divide it up? Do they have debts? How do those get paid?
Okay.
And the court supervises that happen.
Now, if you pass and you have an estate plan, you still go through a form of probate. It's just a different sector of it?
Not necessarily. So a big component of estate planning, and what I help people do, is create a plan that keeps all of their matters out of court.
Okay.
Why put your family into a court case? Why send your stuff through court proceedings if you don't have to? Because it's not required.
I see. So probate is not required.
Probate's not required.
Okay.
It only happens because you failed to plan.
You failed to plan. I understand. Right? So it's like a punishment.
Yeah. So the system is basically like, look, if you take care of yourself, if you set yourself up, if you have a plan, that plan will control, and we won't get involved. But if there is no plan, then the law has to intervene, and we have to ensure that everything gets handled. What is
it called when you pass without a will? Intestate?
Yeah, intestate.
Intestate. What a weird word.
Yeah, and if you have a will, you are testate. So you are intestate or testate.
Intestate sounds like you should have a will, like you have it, but it's the opposite. Just dumb Latin.
So as I work with people in the estate planning process, a big overarching theme is, let's keep you out of court, if anything happens to you,
sure,
why subject everything that you work for going through court proceedings? One, because you're going to pay money. Your family's going to pay money. Again, you have to pay the court. You have to likely pay an attorney. And then your property is going to be divvied up, maybe not according to your wishes, but what the law says. So you may want property, assets, money going to certain individuals, but the law may say otherwise.
So because they might deem that certain family members were more closely related, is there like a,
generally,
is there like a map that
there
says...
is. Yeah, we could link it. I have a flow chart if you want to put it in your show notes.
We would love that. Please send it to us. I think that'd be awesome, because I think that there's probably some misconceptions about the flow.
Yeah.
Does it go to, if I'm unmarried, does it go to adult sibling or my mother first?
Yeah, it's basically closest next of kin. All right. So if I have no plan in place, and I pass away, everything goes, and I'm married, everything goes to a spouse.
Correct. And then it doesn't matter that you don't have does it matter if you die intestate if you're married?
It can.
If you have things needed to just you?
Yeah, because then then part of the next issue is how do you own your property, right? So many people think that they're good to go because they have a will, and a will doesn't control most of your assets as to whether or not the courts have to get involved. It seems very counterintuitive. So people complete their will, they say, okay, I've said who gets all my stuff in my will, and they think they're good. And it's actually the ownership. Do I own the property jointly? It's the way it's titled or held that is a big determining factor. So just because I have a will.
So what I just learned is a will and estate planning are separate entities. They might be tied together, but a will...
They're definitely tied together, but ultimately it's, does it achieve what I want? So I want to stay out of court. I do a will. Doesn't mean I'm going to stay out of court. Right. So it doesn't. So that's where I come back to outcomes. So a lot of people get, and I would say the general public get very focused on the documents. I've got the documents. Right?
I agree. I've got the will. Amazing.
I've got the will. I've got the living will. I've got the power of attorney. I've got the trust. Like, here's the paper. Right. Okay, great. But what outcome does that give you?
Right.
That's what matters. And if it's not done properly, it doesn't matter that you have that piece of paper if it's not going to get you the outcome you want, right?
So have you ever, let's just pretend, because we live in a neighborhood where a lot of people move, into, a lot of people from out of state. So they come in from Connecticut. That's where I'm from. So they come in from Connecticut. You're their neighbor, and they say, oh my gosh, I didn't know you did that. I have one of those. Can you review it? And they tell you, oh, this means that I'm going to stay out of probate. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And you're like, no, that isn't this is not how it was written. So do people come to you assuming there's an outcome and it's not right?
Yeah. More commonly is people can't tell me, if they have a plan in place, they can't tell me what it does.
Oh, no.
Right?
They have no idea what they just bought or paid for?
Yeah, and it's not their fault. They're relying on a professional.
Sure.
So this is where I take a very different approach than maybe most or many other estate planning attorneys is when I talk to people who have a plan in place, I ask them, what do you have? And they tell me what they have. I say, great. What does it do? Why do you have that?
Right.
Because they told me to. Okay. But what did you want? What outcomes did you want, right? What did you want to achieve for your family? And they can't tell me. It's because, well, I went down, I met with this person. They said I needed to do X, Y, and Z. And I said, okay, you're the professional. We'll do X, Y, and Z.
Sure.
But they don't truly know what it does,
they don't,
right?
So you're, I would say you're coming from more of like a holistic approach to look at the whole picture to then reverse engineer, like you said, or tease out what needs to be done. So let's pretend, I don't know you and I see your ad on Facebook and I want to meet with you because I'm like, oh shoot, this just happened to my friend and her mother passed away and they didn't have a plan. I don't want that. So then what happens? So I reach out to you and I say, Reid, I want an estate plan. Now what?
Right. So any person who's interested in working with me, the very first thing we do is what I call a legal life planning session.
Okay.
So we're going to sit down. We're going to have a no obligation consultation.
Okay.
Where we're going to look at your current situation. So ahead of that, I asked for you to complete an online questionnaire. Tell me a little bit about yourself and your assets. But the purpose of that meeting is to look at what your immediate real-world situation is, given your circumstances.
Okay.
So you have these particular assets, or you're married, you're single, whatever your situation may be, and then we pose the question, okay, if you were to unexpectedly pass away tonight, if you went out shopping and didn't make it home,
right,
or you were in some sort of accident or had a stroke and now you're alive but incapacitated, what is that going to mean today?
Right.
And so through that analysis, identify what problems you're presently facing.
Okay.
Then once you have that information, my goal is to really educate you, right? Here's what this is where you're sitting. This is what you're sitting in, right?
If you died today, this is what would happen.
Yeah.
With your goods.
Right. Are you okay with that? Right. Are you okay with parts of it but not other parts of it? And then let's fix it. And here's ways we can fix it. And then we start exploring estate planning options, whether a will is enough and healthcare directives together are enough, or are we looking at possibly using a trust to keep things, to achieve what you want to achieve, right? I like to use the analogy of a doctor's visit, a sick visit to the doctor, because not many people have worked with attorneys in good ways. Right?
Yeah, I mean, probably.
So, but we've all gone to the doctor when we were sick, right?
Yes.
So what do? We go in, we're not feeling well, whatever. We want the doctor to check us out, right? And so that's what I'm doing. I'm checking you out.
You're getting your health, your health goods tracker or something.
Yeah. So we're checking you out, as trying to identify what the issues are, right? So the doctor looks you over, checks you out. Ultimately, you have whatever sinus infection.
Great.
So now I can tell you, here's your problems, here's what's wrong.
And this is how we can fix it.
And here's how we can fix it, right? And what's that doctor going to do? Well, they're going to write you a prescription, right?
Right.
Here's your prescription, right? Similarly, I can make my recommendation, say, we need a will, we need a trust.
Oh, this is a great analogy.
Does it end there?
Probably not.
No, right? Because it's not about the paper. It's not about the electronic prescription that went in. It's the outcome that prescription gets you, right?
Did that prescription get you out of your sinus infection?
Yeah, get you well, right? So it's, now you have the tool, you have the paper, the will, the trust, whatever, but it's what that is ultimately going to achieve when the time comes. That's right for you and your family and your kids or whatever your situation is.
Yeah, it's really powerful because, unfortunately, we do have to plan for unexpected events, and you as the person who's doing the estate planning, you're trying to prevent undue stress from your people.
Yeah.
Whatever that looks like. And all of us have stuff that's personal to us that maybe our family wouldn't know what to do with. Like what I just thought of was, I have a horse.
Right.
Like, what are they going to do with him?
Yeah.
Like, seriously. Like, what would they do with him? I mean, none of them like him. Like, they don't ride. They don't want him. So that's...
You own the horse?
I do. No, I own him. He's mine.
Okay.
But what's weird is I really have no proof of ownership. I probably have a bill of sale. Do I actually have the bill of sale?
Yeah.
I don't know. I could probably...
someone's going to be...
I've
dealing with that.
He's been in my possession for 12 or 13 years. So I've moved him around the country.
Yeah.
Connecticut, Colorado to here. So, that would be a really hard situation because he's also not inexpensive.
Right.
Like it involves stuff.
Yeah.
Like more than just, giving him a carrot. It involves a lot of things that, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that has. Like, people have boats.
Is it?
And that's
boats, motorhomes,
and those are expensive to maintain as well.
Yeah.
So what do you do? Like what do you do when that? Like if someone reaches out to you and they're like, "Hey, we always talked about meeting, but we never did.
Yeah.
My mom just passed away, and she has 3 horses, a boat, and a motorhome, and there's nothing. What is the state's plan? Like, how long will this take?"
Oh, it's a great question, and we could spend a long time talking about that. But in short, I say in short. So there's 2 types of probate cases
in
in Florida. One is called a summary proceeding, summary probate. The idea there is it's supposed to be quicker and more streamlined and be able to get done faster because there's not a lot of property. There's not a lot of stuff.
Okay.
Right? There's very minimal assets, and we should be able to just send it to give it to who it needs to go to pretty quickly. That can change, depending
so they can
on,
swap it to the other one if they feel it wasn't
well, you
true.
still have to. It's still all court based, right?
Okay.
So someone comes to me like you just presented, right, and they say, "Mom just died. Here's her things. What do we need to do?" My very first questions are going to be, well, we need to identify, one, does she have a will? Let's say no. Okay, no will. So now we know Florida law is going to control everything. All right, so we're just going to be turning to the books and seeing what happens.
Okay, yep. Horse.
So so then the next question really is, how did she own her property? Was it owned individually in her name alone? Was anything owned jointly?
Everything's individual.
So ownership of property is one of the next big controlling factors determining whether or not that property would have to go through a probate court case. Okay. So let's say, let's just in this case, let's say mom passes away and she just happened to have one bank account and you were on it as a joint owner. Okay. Because you are a joint owner on the account, it automatically goes to you. Nothing changes, right? You are an owner. You own the account along with mom. So now that she's passed away, it's yours. You don't have to do anything. Okay. So that account does not have to go through probate. It's kind of just
that's nice.
Off the picture, right? But if it's individually owned, then the next question then it may have to go into probate,
right?
Because we have to say who's rightfully. Let's try this again. It will have to go into probate because we have to identify who under Florida law is the right person to inherit it.
I see.
Right? It could be adult children. It could be mom's siblings. It just depends on who's alive in the family tree, basically.
On the flow chart.
Yeah.
Flow chart will answer part of those questions.
So it's what do they own? How do they own it?
What now?
And then we start looking at now who's going to get it.
Got it.
And then we open the court case, file the court proceedings, and basically more or less tell the story to the court. This person passed away. Here's the assets they left behind. Here's who's entitled to receive it. It'll be split equally.
Got it.
And then you're basically asking the court to approve it, give you kind of a stamp of approval. Then that will allow an individual within the family, usually, to the executor. Person becomes an executor, what we call personal representative, to go about divvying up the assets. I mean, that's a very tightened up nutshell of an explanation.
Sure.
So there's summary proceeding and there's then what's called formal proceeding. So the idea
sounds terrible.
The idea is the same in both.
Okay.
Here's the assets. Here's who's entitled to get them. We've got to divvy them up and give them to the right people. If the person died owing debts, we may have to resolve those debts, whatever they are. But again, the idea is summary should be quicker and faster because there's not a lot. Formal is there's more stuff to be taken care of. There's going to be more boxes to check, and the process is going to be longer.
Got it.
How long? It all depends. And it also depends on county. Like what county are you in? How busy is the court docket? Because get in line. There's however many hundred of cases ahead of you, and the judge can only read so many pages a day.
Yeah.
Right? And so a lot of the time frame is sitting and waiting. You filed your paperwork, you've submitted it to the court, you wait a week or two, just wait
for them to respond,
for them to review and sign or say no or whatever, right? But a summary proceeding, you could be done in under a year.
A year?
Yeah.
So now you're going to tell me the other one's years.
Year or more, very likely.
Wow. So this is a great segue, but basically, in summary, if you don't want to wait a year, because who the heck after somebody passes away wants to relive this over and over and over again, right? So it really, really is incredibly important to have an estate plan, whether you're 18 or 800.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who you are, because it sounds to me that in general, whenever you involve the courts, it's never speedy, it's never fast. You don't get the results you want.
Right.
It's someone's opinion, even though it's based on law. Blah, blah, blah. You know, it's not gonna get what you want. So, how does someone get a hold of you?
We can probably put my information in your show notes.
Absolutely, yes.
So call, email, text. I am working on holding some free educational seminars. They're live in-person events.
Perfect.
Either once or twice a month. It's something I'm starting. I've done a couple now. I'll be doing them more regularly. Yeah. Where you can come and learn and
ask questions.
Yeah. And it's just really all about what is estate planning, how does probate work, why would it happen, really helping people understand that probate process, right? So in those workshops, we'll walk through. You can do your own little detailed analysis. I give everyone a little worksheet. You can take a little inventory for yourself of what you own, and then we kind of do it just to briefly help you see what your risk might be. What is your risk of ending up in probate?
That sounds, that's great community outreach. Reid, thank you so much for coming on again. I so appreciate it. It's a really interesting topic. And I think we need to get more people on board to prevent.
Because we could take another hour and a half, and I could tell you the horror stories.
I'm sure there's some good ones for sure.
Yeah, the cases and the situations I've seen and taken into court because they weren't planning in place.
I'm thinking of them all right now, of the conversation that I didn't have last time with my mom. Again, Mom, I'll be calling you. Thanks, Reid. Thanks, Reid, again. I so appreciate it. Thanks.